Thank you, friends. Shabbat Shalom. I hope everybody has or had a fantastic Thanksgiving. And thank you to all of you who not only wish the same for me, but who listen and watch, whether weekly or not. I'm humbled by your allocating some of your precious time to what I have to say and teach, and I give thanks to and for all of you. It's also nice that while I was in my furry Esau mode, now I am back to my smooth Jacobian self. We all have a twin hidden deep inside. I said last week we would talk a little bit about the connection between Thanksgiving and Sukkot in celebration of this great holiday. Friends, in their attempt to reform the Church of England, the Puritans wanted to base their religion purely on biblical teaching. So a group of them fled from England and sailed to Holland, where they enjoyed more religious tolerance and spent several years among the Sephardic Jews there. So is it any wonder that when they later celebrated the legendary First Thanksgiving, their conscious frame of reference was Sukkot? They eventually became disillusioned with the Dutch way of life, believing it had a corrupting effect on their children. Perhaps they had settled in Amsterdam. So a number of these Puritans, seeking a better place to practice their religion, set their sights on America. So they sailed from Holland to Plymouth, England, and from there to the New Plymouth, dropping anchor at Cape Cod in November of 1620. Now, historically, many of the Puritans in England regarded themselves as Hebraists, and in America, the Puritans modeled their new homeland upon Old Testament principles, such that when Harvard University was founded in 1636, Hebrew, along with Latin, was taught as one of the two main languages. And it is said the governor wanted to make the Mosaic Code the law of the land and Hebrew the official language of the state. Now, the early settlers called their Plymouth colony Little Israel and compared Governor Bradford to Moses. They felt that they had fled lands of oppression and had found a new home, just as the Israelites had once fled Egyptian slavery and settled in the Holy Land. Later, Ben Franklin used this as a model for his proposed Great Seal of the United States. Friends, both Thanksgiving and Sukkot were autumn festivals, and both were a time for giving thanks to God for the blessings of the harvest season. And I think it is great that we devote a day specifically to give thanks and express gratitude for all the gifts we have. And at the same time, it is unfortunate that we must set aside a day for it, because it really is something that we could take note of every day. Not a day goes by that I can't think of a myriad of things I am thankful for. Sometimes we just forget. We focus on the lack or what did not go well. Well, believe it or not, everything that happens is the right thing, because it is part of the pattern of our lives, the rhythm of our lives, which I mentioned last week, and which we will see so much more of in this week's and next week's Parshas. Give thanks, friends. We all have so much, and please share with those who have less. Now, there's an interesting bill taking shape in the Israeli parliament right now, one which may do more to divide than to unify. The separation of church and state must exist everywhere, and we must move forward, not backward. With all these things going on, I'm reminded of that timeless Thunderclap Newman Pete Townsend classic, Something in the Air. Call out the instigators, because there's something in the air. We've got to get together sooner or later, because the revolution's here, and you know it's right. Speaking of which, have we not learned to stop the wholesale burning, looting, and destruction of innocence? We just had the anniversary of a horrible event that marked the systematic and open destruction of Jewish lives, not just businesses. This week's Ferguson reactions in many ways are no different. Some choose the opportunity to simply create havoc and destruction. How does burning and looting provide a positive move forward or an example of change? I don't get it. To me, it is anger, hurt, and frustration run rampant, and violence, my friends, is never a solution. I think history may show violence ultimately leads to greater repression, and the cycle deepens. All we are saying is give peace a chance. And speaking of peace and gifts, Hanukkah and Christmas are just around the corner. Certainly the retail season has begun, and thoughts are turning to those twin festivals of light and miracles. And I myself was thinking how nice it would be to see a new green field under the tree. Friends, please celebrate the miracles of your life every day. We are at an amazing section of the Torah, my friends. The incidents which have just taken place and which are about to take place are still rippling through the fabric of time. Rebekah tells Jacob to leave because she fears Esau will kill him. And so she sends him away. And I guess the biblical editors thought they were fooling us because they tell us it is under the guise of bride seeking. But friends, it was simply an excuse for his fleeing out of fear for what he did to his brother. And he, like Odysseus, leaves on a 20-year journey of self-exploration. How does it feel to be without a home, like a complete unknown, like a rolling stone? The lessons in this parsha are enormous. They are about taking responsibility and owning up for the incidents we created, which have to be dealt with. We can be our greatest critic and our worst taskmaster. Some are haunted. I can remember incidents 25, 30, 40, even 50 years ago that would have been long forgotten by history. How about you? Are you haunted at all by things you said or did all those years ago? I also know people that are practically psychopaths and sociopaths who take no responsibility or remorse for anything. Now, Jacob actually never demonstrates remorse for any action. In fact, he continues to complain about how he is treated his whole life. Friends, we choose how we are going to deal with situations. We can work to attain our highest projection of self or our basest. As this week we explore, vayetze, he went out. This is the true beginning of the karmic payback, which sets in motion the 400 years in Egypt. And I see that in a few weeks we will have the latest film version of the Exodus being released, Gods and Kings, starring the former Batman and American Psycho Christian Bale as Moses. And having read some of the things he and the director have said, I can't wait to see the treatment that this film gives. This week, my friends, we are in for the greatest biblical lesson in karma and in justification. Our sages have contemplated and discussed several key issues. How could Isaac not be aware of the true nature of his twin sons? I love it. True nature. According to who? Certainly not according to what is written. Why did he insist on blessing his apparently wicked son Esau? Why was it necessary for Jacob to get the blessings intended for his brother? Well, remember, friends, it is not the Torah that says Esau was wicked. It is our attempt at justification. Now, questions 2 and 3 are the rights of birth order, which provided not just the physical transfer of assets, but the right of spiritual leadership also. And it is us seeing the brothers as good and evil. But in reality, we'll end up seeing that Esau was compassionate and does not hold a grudge and truly loved his brother, while Jacob was conniving and fearful and faced his karma in episode after episode. But we still try so hard to prove the other. The history of a nation is tied to the brother. We have to find ways to elevate. Think of what you're going to see. Jacob's karma comes back on him. He loves his cousin Rachel and works for her father Laban for 7 years to obtain her hand in marriage. And on the day after the wedding, Jacob finds out he wed Rachel's older sister Leah instead. And he asks Laban, "Why have you deceived me?" And Laban says, "It's not done like that in our place, to give the younger one before the firstborn." Wow! Is that not exactly what Jacob did? And he's upset about it and feels deceived. The man who took away his firstborn brother's privilege now suffers because of the firstborn privilege of his beloved's sister. This is fantastic. They can't write stuff like this anymore. Events are going to unfold, all connecting events put in place. If you did not believe in karma before, how can you not when you read this parsha? We understand Jacob had to put the fur of the goat on his arms and neck to feel hairy because the near blind Isaac will feel him. And years later, his sons would dip Joseph's coat in the blood of a goat to deceive him into believing Joseph, his one beloved son, was dead. Jacob deceived his father with the skin of a goat and his brother's clothes. And then his sons deceive him with their brother's coat and the blood of a goat. This was a man who would spend the rest of his life in hiding, and that in itself would be so tiring. As John Lennon sang in Scared from Walls and Bridges, I'm tired, I'm tired, I'm tired, being so alone, no place to call my own, like a rolling stone. He toiled for his uncle, no place to call his own. And there we go with another reference to a rolling stone, and you will see that stones, my friends, are the language of this parsha. In many ways, it is too bad that this and next week's are not read together, for they do complete each other and provide a fantastic picture of life and its lessons. I've just closed my eyes again, climbed aboard the Dreamweaver train. Driver, take me away, my worries of today. I'd leave tomorrow behind. Dreamweaver, I believe you can get me through the night. Dreamweaver, I believe we can reach the morning light. Friends, we are now about to read the most famous dream in the Bible. Pharaoh's prophetic dreams were pretty good, but this one is magical. Genesis 28:12. A ramp was set against the ground with its top reaching the heavens, and look, messengers of God were going up and coming down it, and look, the Lord was poised over him, and he said, I, the Lord, am the God of Abraham your father and the God of Isaac. We think of it as Jacob's ladder, but it was not a ladder. The description was of a Mesopotamian ziggurat, something the people would be all too familiar with, a vast ramp with terraced landings. And how does Jacob see it? He says, this can be but the house of God, and this is the gate of the heavens. It is an incredible dream. We have God, we have angels, we have beings going up and coming down. And it marks the first of the stone references. And look for the stones in this parsha, my friends. The first stone is a pillow. And Rashi suggested these types of stones were placed beside the head because they would have been really uncomfortable to sleep on. You think? Throughout this parsha, you will see that stones are Jacob's personal motif. From the stone at his head to the stone pillar he sets up commemorating the spot. The pillars that Moses will later outlaw. Then there's the giant stone upon the well, which he will roll away when he performs the betrothal ritual. And the pile of stones that he will set up to mark his treaty with Laban. Throughout this parsha, we also get tremendous insights into this final patriarch's character. Do we ignore it? He is a suspicious bargainer. He is a wrestler with words and conditions. He had put in place stipulated conditions of sale to the famished Esau. He was leery that he would be found out when Rebekah proposed her plan of deception to him. We are now about to see that he wants to be sure God will fulfill his side of the bargain before he commits himself to God's service. If the Lord God will be with me and guard me on this way that I am going, and give me bread to eat, and clothing to wear, and I return safely to my father's house, then the Lord will be my God. Wow! Later he will prove to be a sharp dealer in his transactions with his uncle Laban, and he will scheme again before his final meeting with his brother Esau. What a guy! Okay, he comes to Haran, sees and falls in love with Rachel, his uncle Laban's daughter. That is his cousin. It, of course, begins with the betrothal ritual, when he rolls away the giant stone from the well to water the herd. And there we have the third of the stone references. And his Homeric feat of strength in rolling away the huge stone single-handedly forms the bookend or counterpart to his mother's feat of carrying up water for 10 thirsty camels, which she performed the betrothal ritual. And he tells Laban that he will work 7 years to marry Rachel. And payback begins, my friends. Many have described this as Laban's deception of the great deceiver. Jacob served 7 years for Rachel, and they seemed in his eyes but a few days in his love for her. And Jacob said to Laban, give me my wife, for my time is done, and let me come to bed with her. And Laban gathered all the men of the place and made a feast. And when evening came, he took Leah, his daughter, and brought her to Jacob. And he came to bed with her. And Laban gave Zilpah his slave girl to Leah his daughter as her slave girl. And when morning came, look, she was Leah. And he said to Laban, what is this you have done to me? Was it not for Rachel that I served you? And why have you deceived me? And Laban said, it is not done thus in our place to give the younger girl before the firstborn. Finish out the bridal week of this one, and we shall give you the other as well, for the service you render me still for another 7 years. Friends, it has been clearly recognized since late antiquity that the whole story of the switched brides is a meting out of poetic justice to Jacob. The deceiver deceived, deprived by darkness of the sense of sight, as his father is by blindness, relying like his father on the misleading sense of touch. However, this sets up a horrible sibling rivalry between the sisters played out forever. You see, Jacob loved Rachel, not Leah. Leah truly got the short end of the deal. But God made Leah fertile and Rachel not. And so Leah hoped providing children would win Jacob's love, which it did not, and resulted in the first two. The Lord has seen, Reuben, and the Lord has heard, Shimon, based on her lamentations to God. I look at these relationships and two songs come to mind. Just change the name in your mind. Martha, my dear, you have always been my inspiration. Please be good to me. Martha, my love, don't forget me. Martha, my dear. And half of what I say is meaningless, but I say it just to reach you, Julia. Now, I love the Midrash Bereshit Rabbah, which vividly represents the correspondence between these two episodes. And all that night he cried out to her, Rachel, and she answered him. In the morning, and look, she was Leah, he said to her, why did you deceive me? Daughter of a deceiver, didn't I call out Rachel in the night and you answered me? She said, there is never a bad barber who doesn't have disciples. Isn't this how your father cried out Esau and you answered him? The whole story is great. You know, I love the Esau part, but I love the bad barber with disciples part, like the story about the kids' table at the Last Supper. Friends, this parsha is the epitome in karma and relationships, spousal, sibling, generational. It is a family based on deceptions and schemes. Leah trades mandrakes for the right to sleep with Jacob, buying him like the lentils bought Jacob the birthright. Jacob makes a bargain with Laban regarding the speckled flocks, and through trickery makes sure that Laban gets the feeble ones. Rachel steals and hides the family teraphim, and through her own deception keeps them hidden, and in so doing writes her own karmic death sentence. And friends, in what almost seems like a throwaway line, when Jacob is arguing with Laban, we get an incredible snapshot of a family's belief system. Were it not that the God of my father, the God of Abraham, and the terror of Isaac was with me, you would have sent me off empty-handed. The God of Abraham and the terror of Isaac. What must have Isaac put in his children to warrant that appellation? This is the only description of God this way in the Torah, and unsuccessfully prompted some biblical scholars to argue that the name has nothing to do with terror or fear. But we see that Jacob is governed by fear his entire life, crippled by it almost. And he never once uses the Semitic term for God, Elohim. Instead, when he thinks of the God of his father Isaac, he senses something ominous, awesome, and frightening. The parsha ends with the beginning of the reunion, and that, my friends, is fantastic. Instant karma is going to get you, going to knock you off your feet. Better recognize your brothers, everyone you meet. Why in the world are we here? Surely not to live in pain and fear. Why on earth are you there when you're everywhere? Come and get your share. Miss you, John. Thank you for joining me. Come and get your share. Give thanks. Love your family. Be well, be happy, be thankful, be grateful, be blessed, and share those blessings. And I look forward to seeing you all next week. Thank you. Love you all. Shabbat Shalom. Have a fantastic week, my friends, and a fantastic Thanksgiving.